And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here, back with another Waffle wrap up. We've come to it, ladies and gentlemen. The women's season has hit finals time, and the men's season is just getting going halfway through the year. So I had to pull my co host aside. Let's talk Waffle footy. We will jump out to WA, rejoining us after a couple of weeks taking a leave of absence, Mr. Paul Persick. Paul, great to see you, sir.
Great to see you, Donny. Hello, Rick, and hello, everybody. And let me tell you, folks, it's a great time of the year for the women's competition. Finals time, 4 teams remain. And the men's competition, I tell you what, it's starting to take shape with the final five. So really excited to talk Waffle footy here today, especially the Waffle W finals. Can't wait for it.
Definitely, for sure. And joining us, as always, the man, the myth, the legend of Waffle Footy Facts. That is Rick Gauchi. Rick fighting a little bit of crook, but he decided to soldier up here. So we will try to be sure that he doesn't have to talk too much. Rick, great to see you, sir. Hopefully, you're on the mend.
Yeah, how you get, Donny? Hey, Paul. Yeah, I've been a bit of a crook for the last couple of weeks, so you'll have to excuse me if I'm coughing and spluttering a few times during this pod, but I'll do my best to get through. We should be
You're
good
a
to
trooper,
go.
mate. Absolute trooper.
Absolutely,
So good.
absolutely. So, gentlemen, we've done it. We've rounds 14 through 16 in the women and 9 through 12 in the men have gone along. Paul, we'll start with you. Talk to us about this last 3 weeks of footy because it's been fantastic. We've seen the final set in the women's and the men's starting to kind of see a final five, maybe six, kind of separate themselves from the pack.
It's very interesting with the final five starting to take shape in the men's competition. We're obviously halfway through, obviously, with the Waffle men's competition. East Perth and Peel, I mean, you can't separate them at the moment. It's at the top of the table. They are looking the goods. They played some really good footy in the first half of the year. Peel, most recently, they demolished Perth by 44 points in round 11. And East Perth, they had a bit of a hiccup in their last hit out, 9-point loss to Claremont, but they're starting to hit their straps in the second half of the season. They got some good players in the side. They got Swan Districts this weekend. It's a huge, huge game. And the rest of the five, South Fremantle going along very well. They had a hiccup against Swan Districts last week. And then East Fremantle, they completely towed up Subiaco by 86 points. And then, Swan Districts in the five. I reckon, I said on Around the Waffle on Tuesday, they've got what it takes to make the five. And I reckon they will if they keep this winning run up. So as far as the men's competition goes, the final five may be just about set, but Claremont and West Perth still hanging in there. And I think it's safe to say you could put a line through Subiaco, West Coast, and Perth for 2024. But at the moment, the battle for the five still pretty exciting, but I reckon the five might just be set.
Definitely, for sure. And Rick, as the Swans man that you are, both men's and women's team playing quite well over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a good month or so for the Swans teams. Also, the Rogers Cups team in the girls as well have also made the final. So exciting time down at Bassendean at the moment. A few celebrations lately. We've had a 90th year celebration a few weeks ago. Last weekend, you may have heard Johnny, an immortal of the Waffle, John Todd, six-time premiership coach. Four of those at Swans, one at South Fremantle and at East Fremantle. He won a Sandover medal in 1955 at the age of 17, youngest player in the Waffle to do that. He passed away, unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, and Swan celebrated with a memorial game against South Fremantle just last weekend. So celebrated that. Also, a legend of the Waffle at the moment, modern day legend Tony Knott, knocked up his 300th game, becoming just the seventh player in Waffle history to do so. So it's been a pretty big few weeks for Swans, and now we've got a massive game against East Perth, who've actually had the wood over Swans the last couple of years coming up this round. So it's been a few good weeks, 3 wins in a row for the men's, which is the longest active winning streak in the league. So hopefully they can continue that. And the girls, held off some challenges from Suvi and South Fremantle for that fourth spot. A big win against West Perth a couple of weeks ago sort of cemented the spot in the four, and it's I think anybody's game in the Waffle women's finals coming up over the next couple of weeks. So exciting times all round.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I was definitely made me smile as I saw that how Swans have done over the last 3 weeks. But let's jump to it. We'll go through game by game really quickly and talk some of these results up. We'll go to the women's. We'll get through 14 through 16, and then we'll go back and cover the men. So round 14 sees West Perth knock off East Perth 90-15. South Fremantle survive a scare by Subiaco 39-37. Claremont get back to winning ways, knocking off Peel Thunder 29-11. And Swan Districts fall just a little bit short to East Fremantle 34-22. A cracking game between South Fremantle and Subiaco as Subi tries to keep their chances for finals alive, just fall short to the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah, it
one
was.
that has kept South Fremantle in the hunt, and I think that was probably the first nail for Subi there, missing out the spot in the finals. The other results pretty much went to plan, but yeah, that was a big win for South, and it sort of knocked Subi's charge for the finals down a little bit there, I think. What are you going to say, Paul?
Yeah, they just ran out of legs, Subiaco. They just ran out of legs there in the last quarter.
Yeah.
Definitely for sure. We'll jump over to round 15 where we see South Fremantle get a nice win over Peel Thunder 36-25. Claremont survive a scare from Subiaco 24-21. East Fremantle put a whooping on East Perth 101-6. And Swan Districts get the win over West Perth in the women's side of the Persic Gauchi Cup as Swan Districts beat West Perth 46-25. The little chuckle by Rick as I say that again. So Paul, looking at this round, I mean Claremont again playing with fire a little bit, keeping Subi in this game, and behinds are really is the reason that they pulled this victory out.
Well, that's been my main concern for Claremont is their inaccuracy in front of goal and unable to, finish off some really tight games. I mean, they've had a couple of losses on the last kick of the day. Keep in mind, they lost their first ever game to West Perth, their first ever loss to the Falcons a few weeks beforehand, and they almost fell out again against Subiaco. So they've got to get rid of this habit of falling out of close games when it's on the line because it's such a crucial time for them. But you've got players like Arnott, Campo, Tomkin, also Jamie Harkin, the reigning Dara Kerr medalist, in fine form. Also up forward, you've really got to get some good scoreboard pressure from Campo, also Charlotte Tomkin as well. So, yeah, close one there for Claremont. They got out of jail that day, but, the double chance had almost slipped away. The double chance almost slipped away, but they got there in the end.
Definitely for sure. Rick?
Yeah, go agree with what Paul said there. So, yeah, that was a tight one for Claremont, and we've talked recently that they've sort of been stuttering a little bit as they get towards the finals. So it does open the door for West Perth or Swans if they can get up in the first, whichever one gets up in the semi-final. If they do meet the Tigers in the preliminary final. That's assuming obviously Ishuman will get straight through this weekend. So yeah, interesting times down at Claremont for the women's team, just struggling a little bit, but finals, as Paul said, is a different beast, and you never know what happens come finals.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We'll definitely have to see again. Claremont, a very experienced side, so we'll have to see how that goes. But they've stuttered a lot more than they're used to, so it'll be interesting. Does that dent their confidence a little bit, despite what happens in round 16, which is a perfect jump as we see Swan Districts capitalize on a weak Peel Thunder team, winning 69-10. East Fremantle ending the year again very solid, beating South Fremantle 52-28. Claremont decides to definitely get a nice run against Witches Hats as they win 104-2. And the final game of the season, Subiaco gets a little bit of pride, knocking off West Perth 42-9. Interesting results here. Nothing super close. You would really look at it, except for Subiaco. Most of the favorites won. Rick, your thoughts?
Yeah, a bit of a surprise result, that last one on Sunday. I hadn't actually seen that score, being a Sunday game and been a bit sick. So a bit of interesting result there for West Perth. I'm not sure if Paul may be able to shed some more light on the team maybe that West Perth put out in the park. Maybe they rested a few players for the finals. Not too sure with that one. But the Sharks, yeah, good solid win over South, and Claremont. Maybe that's a little tonic for Claremont going to the finals. 100 thrashing of Witches Hats for the poor old East Perth team. Finished the dismal season with an absolute thrashing there. So maybe that's the spur that Claremont needed for the finals. A win is a win, and a big win is a big win. So it's got to do a lot for their confidence, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Rick. On the West Perth front, West Perth did rest a couple of players, and obviously the result does show. Their depth was lacking, obviously, with with the fact that West Perth were resting a lot of their most vital players, maybe as a tune-up for the finals. It's not obviously not nice to go into the finals with 2 straight losses in a row, but they can put that behind them now. They'll go into that semi-final against the Swans with a full-strength side. But Claremont, as you said, that was a win that they needed, especially when your big form players are down, and you need a good run. Even though East Perth are obviously a weak side when you look at it on paper, and their position on the ladder really reflects that. Eva O'Donnell, I reckon she could be a forward to watch out in that second semi-final on Sunday. She kicked 6 big goals, and she could be a headache for the East Fremantle back line on Sunday. But no, that was a big win for Claremont. They needed that after a couple of stutters. But I'm probably not the most optimistic about Claremont in the finals campaign.
That'll definitely be interesting. Will their wayward kicking come back to bite them come finals time? Because bad kicking is bad football, and in the finals it's even bigger. So that is going to do it for the women's home and away season. All 16 rounds are complete. Finals are set. We will discuss that just a little bit later in the podcast. Let's jump back over to the men's, where we see rounds 9, 10, and 11 that we have to go through. Jumping back to round 9 sees Claremont knock off Peel Thunder 72-43. Swans with another win, beating Subiaco 65-54. Perth falling just short to the West Coast Eagles 71-69. South Fremantle and East Fremantle in the Fremantle Derby as the Bulldogs get the win over the Sharks 87-73. And West Perth falls short to the East Perth Royals 86-83. I mean, 2 very, very good games on WA Day in both of the derbies there, Paul. You have to say, good footy to celebrate WA Day.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, it's the people's derbies, the real derbies, with no disrespect to West Coast Fremantle. That derby in the AFL is all talk and no action. These derbies are all action, make no mistake about it. I mean, and we had some great crowds over there as well. I mean, 7,500 at Fremantle Oval for the Freo Derby, and then 6,500 at Pentanet Stadium for the Perth Derby. The Freo Derby, magnificent for South Fremantle. They got off to a great start in the first quarter. Dylan Main was led off the leash early. He'd go on and kick 6 goals. East Fremantle, they got back into the contest to their credit, but that first quarter really set them back, even with the likes of Boakhurst and Leggett providing some good scoreboard pressure in that forward line. They were just playing catch-up all day. And then the Perth Derby, I was fortunate enough to call that derby on Monday. That's one of the best Perth derbies I've ever seen in my time. There was absolutely nothing in it all day between the two teams. And then the clutch move made by Ross McQueen to put Harrison McCready, who's regularly a good backman, put him up forward. He kicked 2 goals late to win the game for East Perth. West Perth, they had plenty of chances, and their inaccuracy, which has been a constant struggle, came back to bite them once again. I mean, and I even spoke to the East Perth players after the game on that WA day. Hammer Brayshaw and Thomas Medhad even said themselves they should have lost that game because West Perth had so many chances. They didn't play anywhere near their best, East Perth, so that was still a bit of a concern for them at that time. But that was still a sensational game in front of what was a great crowd, and it just sums up how good WA Day footy is.
Definitely, for sure. Rick, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a pinnacle day in WAFL footy, and hopefully they can keep it clear of the AFL, who are trying to get their grubby hands onto WA Day and play some footy on the WAFL's big day. So yeah, two great derbies. I think Paul covered them pretty well. I did catch the end of both of those derbies, and at West Perth East Perth one, I was. I don't normally do this, but I was hoping West Perth got up actually, even though it was better for Swans that East Perth won. Just the way they were playing, they were really fighting hard and they were pushing. They just couldn't get over the line in the end, unfortunately, for the Falcons. But I think the story here was West Coast getting over Perth in Northern for another win. So they backed it up from their upset from the previous week against Claremont that we had talked about at the last pod, Donny. So back-to-back wins for the Eagles, which was really, really good to see. The Swans Subi game was very below standard. It was quite a poor game for the first half at least. And Claremont, we saw them lose to West Coast the previous week, but they pulled out a big win against Peel, which was a bit of an upset. They led from the start to finish to win by 5 goals, and then they back it up in round 10 with a win over East Perth, who are also on top of the ladder. So two great wins in a row for the Tigers. We'll talk about obviously the round 10 next, but they've turned the season around after getting a bit of a smack in the face by the Eagles.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And I'm saying, and it's a great transition. We'll go to round 10 as the bye rounds start, as we see four teams get a nice little break. Swan Districts, Peel, Perth, and South Fremantle take a seat, as we see Subiaco with a nice win over West Coast, 112-47. Claremont survive East Perth, as Rick already kind of gave away just the littlest bit, kind of getting their form back with a 59-50 win, and East Fremantle bounce back and get a nice win over West Perth, 82-40. So, I mean, you got to say it, Claremont again finds a way to beat a top level team. They're finally starting to hopefully finding some form after some rough patches there just before the previous rounds.
Yeah, it was a very good win for Claremont in that game. I did catch a bit of that game on the stream as well. And East Perth's inaccuracy, it's been a story we've talked about it plenty of times this season. Inaccuracy really hurting most teams in losses this year. There's been so many teams that have had more scoring shots and also inside 50s and have lost games this year. It's not a common occurrence, but this year it seems to be what is happening. In East Perth are one of the more accurate sides this season. In that game, they kicked 6 goals 14 against Claremont 9 goals 5. So they obviously weren't without their chances, but Claremont did and obviously held on and had a good 9-point win in that game. The other two results, East Fremantle well and truly are back, and I think they're pushing the top two teams. I think for favouritism at the moment, I'm pretty keen on the Sharks the way they're playing at the moment, that they're going to really push come finals time. If they can get into the top three, that 4-point penalty that they had at the start of the season may just cost them, but they're definitely on the way, the Sharks, that's for sure.
Paul?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. The Sharks are really starting to build something really good this season. I mean, they absolutely crunched the Falcons on that Sunday at Fremantle Oval, especially in that last quarter, 7 goals 6 to absolutely nothing. I mean, that's a sign, I reckon, that now they're starting to play their best football once again. They've been a little bit inconsistent. Obviously, that 4-point penalty and a run of injuries earlier in the season put them under a lot of pressure, but they are getting a couple of good players back later down the track. So watch out for the Sharks in the second half of the season. Claremont, they just grinded it out in what was horrible conditions over at Sullivan Logistics Stadium in Leederville. Jai Bolton, 37 disposals. He played his best game at this time, no doubt about that. I mean, the veteran really stood up to the task, kicked a goal to seal the match, leading in a long foot race inside that forward 50. Magnificent piece of play from Bolts. East Perth's inaccuracy, biting them again, and no surprise about Subiaco. I mean, they needed to get back on the winners list, and they certainly did just that. I mean, 16-16 to 6-11, they put an absolute talent on the Eagles on that day at Leederville, and even spread of goal kickers. Subiaco, their midfield still under a bit of questioning. Obviously, they were relying a lot on Greg Clark, who was playing against his old side, ironically, on that day. So he's getting a lot of the ball, but not getting a lot of backup in that midfield as well. So that's where Subiaco, at that time, I was thinking, okay, big win over the Eagles. Now it's a time to get their act together. But as we'll see in moments, they're still stuttering along.
Yeah, and we'll jump right to it to round 11. And I was just, as you were finishing that up, I just kicked it over and was looking at the results. And I remember going, unfortunately, this next one doesn't have really any good ones because, again, we're the second rounds of the byes is West Coast, West Perth, East Perth, and Claremont all take a seat this round. And unfortunately, none of these games are super competitive as Pale Thunder beats the Perth Demons 84-40. Swan Districts smack down South Fremantle 72-45, and East Fremantle hand Perth a nice whooping 116-30. Unfortunately, we're seeing those top level teams just absolutely beat some of these teams a little bit lower on the ladder. So we're starting to see that separation between the final five and the rest of the competition. Rick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely. And Perth are definitely feeling their injuries. They're still yet to get Sam Simpson and Charlie Constable back. So they're two big players and they're hit pretty hard with injuries. There's a few players who are trying really hard, like Corey Byrne and Jack Cooley have been pretty impressive this season, but they just don't have enough depth. And Peel back on the winning list after their sort of shock, I guess, defeat to Claremont the previous week. They came with the right attitude and pretty much after half time, it was 7 goals to 1. So it was pretty even at half time. Perth actually had the lead at quarter time, but Peel's strong Dockers contingent of players like Erasmus, Brody, and the likes were just way too strong. Swans and South, that was a pretty entertaining game. Swans pretty much controlled the play. South Fremantle did have a lot more inside 50. Swans' defence was very, very strong. Jake Piscini having his probably best game of the season since coming back from Port Adelaide after a couple of injury interrupted seasons over there. probably put his best game in for the season, as I said. And East Fremantle, well, Subiaco just didn't show up. 2 goals to half to 3/4 time. It was 2 goals to 1, 2 goals to nothing in Subi's favour last quarter. East Fremantle pretty much shut the shop, closed down the last quarter. And I think one of the surprise packets for the Sharks, and Paul may want to pitch in on this as well, as the ruckman, Lachlan Blackiston, who replaced Lee, what's his name? Lee Teakle. His first name was lost. Yeah, Teakle, who got redrafted again back into the AFL by North Melbourne, the mid-season draft. And I think a lot of people were thinking, well, East Fremantle, that's a big loss for them. But young Blackiston's come in and had over 50 hit-outs in the last two matches, and last game he had 21 disposals, 50 hit-outs against Subi. If he doesn't get the 3 stand-over medal votes in that game, I don't know what the umpires are thinking. Absolutely brilliant performance by him. And East Fremantle just haven't lost anything with Teakle going out, with Blackiston coming in. So that's massive for the Sharks and Subi. I think, that's one of their most disappointing performances for a number of years. Been a powerhouse in the competition probably since the turn of the century. So those performances by Subi are few and far between. And probably not a good thing. It was a week after they re-signed their coach, Lee Wardman, for a couple more years. So I'm not sure what that means, but not too good for Subi.
I have to say, Rick, it's the classic case of sign your coach and sign your season away syndrome. I think Subiaco have suffered that, unfortunately. But going back to Lockie Blackiston, he was just sensational. I gave him the 5 votes on Around the Waffle on Tuesday. His performance in the ruck was just ruthless. He's not only a good tap-out ruckman, but his follow-up work in midfield was just magnificent. I reckon East Fremantle have covered the loss of Bryn Teakle quite well. If he keeps this form up in the second half of the season, all the other opponents of East Fremantle better watch out. As I said earlier, they're starting to build something, and I reckon Lockie Blackiston could hold a really big key. And I'll echo your sentiment, Rick. If he doesn't get the 3 Sandover medal votes, something is definitely wrong with the voting. It has to be said. But, he had some good backup in midfield as well. Murdoch, 34, Joyce, Schoenfeld, another great game from him. And Subiaco, well, that was the most deplorable performance from Subiaco I've ever seen in my time of covering WAFL footy. I mean, only 2 goals to 3/4 time and 4 goals 6 for the day against the reigning premiers. Absolutely horrible. And no doubt they'll be having a good hard look at themselves over the next fortnight, because the problem is, next up, they got Peel Thunder in a couple of weeks, so it's another big test for them. Swan Districts, they turned it on in that game, the John Todd Memorial Cup game. Great crowd, some 4,500 there, to pay a tribute to a giant of the game, a legendary coach of 3 WAFL clubs. Brad Lynch up forward, magnificent 4 goals. They really lifted in that second half with a 4-goal-to-2 second half. It wasn't the best game as far as scoring is concerned, if I may say that, but just the intensity and the urgency that was sensed by both sides for a time was magnificent. Nick Roker, I rate him very highly. I mean, he's come over from South Australia and has taken to the WAFL like a fish to water. He has been absolutely magnificent in midfield. And Tony Knott, he's Tony Knott. He's Tony Knott. He just lifts the team when they need him. That great sense of leadership that Knotty has got, as you said a couple of weeks ago, passing the 300 mark in what was a highly emotional day for the Swans and for Knotty. He continues with his leadership to lift the club. And Piscini, injury interrupted a couple of years, but 10 marks down back was just magnificent. So, as I said earlier, the Swans, I reckon they're building for a very, very big season and a bigger tilt to September.
Definitely, for sure. So that's going to do it for the last 3 rounds of the men's season. We'll jump to the burning questions. We'll keep the women's section a little bit short because we're going to tip the entire final. So we're going to keep the women's section a little bit shorter. So I'm going to go with this on this. We'll start with Paul on this question. The finals begin this week. I cannot wait. Swan Districts, East Fremantle, Claremont, and West Perth will battle for a premiership. This is overall. What do you think is the most interesting team that we're going to be watching here in the finals of those 4 sides?
Well, for one, everyone will be talking about East Fremantle and Claremont. I mean, they've dominated the competition for the past 3 years, but I'm actually going to go the Falcons. I'm going to go West Perth here. This is their first finals campaign in the WAFL W competition in the current league format. They've got a successful Rogers Cup program as well. That has blended well into the league team. It's their first finals campaign, and they've got tremendous talent at both ends of the ground. We're looking in midfield, Mia Russo, who was the Rogers Cup best and fairest for the grand final, last year. You've also got the Bennett sisters, Emily and Kat, two great guns up forward. You've also got to Peora, Yvna Hare, and also a couple of great players down back. They can really shut down any forward line on any given day. So I reckon West Perth have been the ones that nobody expected at the start of the season to make the finals, but under Clint Degerbroth, who's a new West Perth Women's League coach, they have really catapulted themselves into finals contention. They had some big wins over some high-quality opposition, and including their first ever win against Claremont. I reckon that was the moment that proved to them that they can contend for a flag, against a premiership team from a couple of years ago that, have got overall one of the best midfields in the competition. To beat Claremont at Revo Fitness Stadium, their first ever win, that was a statement to me that they can contend for a premiership and beat any team on any given day with their best lineup. So for me, it has to be West Perth. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they approach their first finals game. Are they going to take it as a good finals lesson, or are they going to treat it just as another game, which honestly you can't really do when it comes to finals?
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100% there. Rick?
Yeah, well, I'm going to sort of take a lead from Paul and keep my prediction on my heart. And I think Swans are the team to keep an eye out for. But I think it's really whoever wins this first semi. I think they could really be a thorn in the side of either East Fremantle or Claremont. So I think Swans is last month, and also their win a couple of weeks ago against West Perth. They've also, as you mentioned, beat Claremont this season. So yeah, they're definitely not without a chance. I think two of the top goal kickers in the competition, in Zapara and Emily Maguire. So they've got some good players up forward as well, which could definitely put some pressure on the Falcons and their defence. So I wouldn't put it past Swans getting over the Falcons this weekend. That's what I'm going to tip, obviously with my heart, but a little bit my brain is saying it just on the form that they've shown, and it's very risky. Paul mentioned that West Perth did rest a few players in that last round. Sometimes that does work, and also sometimes it can be bite you in your backside, so to speak, as well, and just take that momentum out of the team. So who knows? It could affect West Perth negatively. It could also affect them positively. So who knows really in that regard? But I think, I'm going to keep in mind Swans, and again, if West Perth win this week, obviously I'm not going to be surprised, and I do hope that they go well. As Paul said, their first finals appearance, they've come a long way in the last couple of years. They were the whipping girls, I guess you'd call it. You say whipping boys, but of the league when they came in for the first couple of years, a bit like what East Perth has encountered these last 2 years. So to see them actually push their way into the finals is great. So, if either of these teams win this weekend, I think I'll be barracking for them for the premiership to see if they can upset the East Fremantle and Claremont, who have been the strongest sides in the WAFL women's comp for the last 2 or 3 seasons now, and have fought off in the last 2 grand finals. So good luck to the Swans and Swans and West Perth teams, and let's hope for a good contest.
Well, I love this because you two went with the teams that you support. I'm gonna throw a little bit of a I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball, but more for a different reason. I'm gonna say the most interesting team for me is Claremont, because Claremont has been that team that I think everybody has looked at as they've been the standard. They've been the torchbearer of this particular competition for these for as long as I've been paying attention. And this year they've stumbled in a way we haven't seen them. So I'm interested with them because could we see a straight sets out from this great club in this competition? Because as I was saying previous mic with Paul before Rick hopped on, I said the same thing in the Sandful, is that this play-in game, this playing game, the 3-4 matchup, either team can knock off the team that's going to come down from losing in that top matchup legitimately in both competitions. And I'm just as strong on it here that whether it's West Perth or whether it's Swans, both have the ability and have shown they can to knock off Claremont or East Fremantle, whoever comes down, whoever gets defeated in that other semifinal. So this is so intriguing to me, because if Claremont loses, could we see Claremont, like I said, the torchbearer, go out in straight sets, which for some people may be great for the competition, but it'd be very interesting. So for me, it's Claremont. They're the most intrigued, because do they come up with a Claremont performance and show why they've been the standard bearer, or do they crumble under the pressure of you've underperformed this year? So yeah, they're going to be fascinating, but my eyes will be all over this West Perth Swan Districts game. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think whoever wins it is legitimately a red hot crack in that matchup the next week too. So cannot wait for that. I know I brought in the Sandful. It's evil. Do not talk about the Sandful on a Waffle podcast, but I had to compare it because I said the same thing in the Sandful show with Norwood Central Districts that I'm saying here with West Perth Swans. Either team could be dangerous going forward in the finals. So I had to get that in really, really quickly. We'll jump to the men's questions really quickly. Got a couple of fun ones here. I'm excited for this. 11 rounds down. We are about halfway through the season. We're almost through the bye rounds. Peel and East Perth are top of the table. Are these the two teams that we're going to see vying for the minor premiership? Or could we see another team jump into this race and make it a three-horse race going down the stretch? Paul, we'll start with you.
I think that's still a little too early to call between Peel Thunder and East Perth because both sides have had their stumbles across the season, but also we've got another 9 rounds left. Still a lot can change. And keep in mind, the final 5 is separated by just 2 games. So a lot can change in a fortnight's football. Think about this. Peel Thunder, East Perth on 28. South Fremantle on 24. They could catapult the top spot on the ladder if both Peel and East Perth put in shockers this weekend. East Fremantle and Swan Districts making up the 5, but they're only 2 wins apart. So a lot can change. And think about this. Claremont are a win behind. If they win, then they could, come back into the 5. West Perth, they must win against Peel Thunder. So there's not big of a gap between 5th and the teams in 6th and 7th who are still hanging on to contention in the finals. So Peel Thunder and East Perth, at the moment, they're looking like it, but we've still got another 9 rounds to go. South Fremantle could jump in, and even East Fremantle could continue on their second half charge. And Swan Districts, they're building tremendous character. They're building something up for this second half of the season. If they can get another win on the board, man, it's going to really boost their confidence even more. So 2 games apart, it's still pretty open between the teams in the 5.
Rick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I can pretty much say the same as what Paul's mentioned there. I think there's a few big games coming up, and obviously they're all playing each other again. So, no one's played each other. Well, only East Fremantle and Subi have played each other twice. They're the only ones who've played the 10 games. Everyone else has played each other once. So, it's going to be coming down to the games where they're playing each other. I said Swans and East Perth this week, a massive game. Swans win. They're a game behind East Perth. So, it doesn't take much. East Perth and Peel have both stumbled to Claremont in the last couple of games. Claremont are coming. It's so close. I think East Fremantle, as I mentioned before, they're the team I think on the charge at the moment. They're really pushing really hard. If they didn't have that 4-point penalty, they'd be only a game behind East Perth and Peel. So, and their percentage is also very strong. So it could come down to percentages. South and Swans are probably about 20% behind the other 3 sides in the 5 at the moment. So they're going to want to make sure they get some big wins against some of the lower sides in the second half of the year if they can. South have got the Eagles this week, so it's an opportunity for them to boost their percentage, depending on which Eagles team decides to show up this week. But yeah, it's pretty open. Yeah, I think East Perth and Peel probably the front runners still for those top 2 spots. But I think maybe by the time we get to the next spot in another 3 or 4 weeks' time, it might be a little bit clearer. Things might be shaping up a bit more. But I think at this stage, I think any of the top 5 are, an opportunity to get in the top 2 spots.
That'll be interesting. I had to see because again they've established themselves as the top 2 teams right now. Again, I agree with Paul. There's still 9 games. There's still a lot, but it's always interesting sometimes when you get a couple of teams that kind of break away. Will they jockey between the 2 of them, or will somebody find a way to kind of slip between the gates and find a way in to that particular race? So, and then we'll kind of go the opposite now with 9 rounds to go. Are we looking at the same final 5 that we're sitting at right now? I wanted to pull it up just to be sure that I had it correct. Swan Districts, East Fremantle, South Fremantle, East Perth, Peel Thunder are the 5 right now. Is this going to be the final 5 at the end of the season, or could we see a team outside of the 5 jump in and replace one that's currently there? Rick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's close. I think there's probably 6 teams in it, I think, at the moment. I think West Perth are hanging in there by a thread. They're not far behind, obviously, only a couple of games out the 5. And being such a close season, you just need to put together 3 or 4 wins. Your Swans have had 3 wins in a row when I've gone from 2-4 record to 5-4 record. So it doesn't take much. Claremont, we've just seen beat the top 2 teams in the last 2 weeks. So they've gone from a 2-5 record to a 4-5 record. So if teams can put a few wins on the board, that's going to really put pressure on the top five. But honestly, from what I've seen from the teams, I wasn't really impressed with Claremont for the first few weeks of the season, but definitely beating the top two sides in successive weeks, you've got to give them some credit and think that they've flicked the switch. I don't know. I like to think that Swans can hang in there. They've got a big game against East Perth this week. If they do lose and Claremont have another win, probably expected against Perth, a team that they've dominated for years, that puts them right in the race. And a 5-goal win for Claremont, 5-goal loss for Swans. Claremont are in the 5, so it's pretty open. See, I think I'm not convinced with South Fremantle. Still, I wasn't really convinced with the way they played. So. And they're only, again, a couple of games clear, and Claremont, their percentage is not the best. So I think there's 3 teams, East Perth, East Fremantle and Peel, I reckon are guaranteed to play finals at this stage. The other 2 spots, maybe between South, Swans and Claremont, and possibly West Perth if they can pull together some victories.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
I haven't really given you much of a definitive answer there, Donnie. Beating around the bush a little bit, but that's
it happens. It happens.
Yeah. I don't think I can give a definitive answer either, because as Rick said, there's still positions up for grabs, and it's still pretty open in that race for the final 5. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how the second half of the season develops. The only certainty that I would put in there in that final 5 would be Peel Thunder. I mean, it's easy to say because they've got their Fremantle listed players, but if you look at the balance, and I've said this many times, and it's fact, the balance between the Peel Thunder listed players, the local players, and the Fremantle players is a lot better than what their premiership years were in 2016, 2017, and they deserve to be on top spot in the ladder, especially the way they played, especially against Perth and a couple of other good quality opposition. They've got West Perth coming up in Joondalup. If they can beat West Perth again in Joondalup like they did last year, to come from behind and win by 9 points last year, if they can do so again and repeat the dose in round 6, that's going to provide another good point that Peel Thunder deserve to be on top of the ladder.
Definitely, for sure. I love it. I hate when you can sit here and say, oh, we know the finals teams. I love the intrigue of it. I want it to go down to the last round. Will it? We'll still have to see. Still plenty, as we said, 9 rounds still left to go. Plenty of time to see this ladder do some shoots and snakes and ladders for sure. So we'll jump to it. We'll get to the tipping. We will start with the men, since we are going to tip all of the women's finals. We will start with the men. And as we said, the last of the buys are here, as East Fremantle and Subiaco will take a nice seat on the couch for this particular round. Let's jump to it. Fremantle Community Bank Oval sees South Fremantle host West Coast. Paul, we'll start with you. Who do you like in this one?
Well, originally one would say how much South Fremantle, but I don't think really you can say that anymore. West Coast, it's really intriguing what sort of 22 they put in the field, because they've got some good wins on the board. I mean, they beat the reigning premiers earlier in the season, then Claremont and Perth back-to-back. So I reckon they'll get close, but South Fremantle's class is going to prove too much in the end. So I reckon South Fremantle by at least 5 goals. The Eagles will be competitive. They've got some good young players in that side. Colin Livingston in the ruck. I reckon he'll face another big test against the emerging Josh Branke, who's the ruckman for South Fremantle. But I reckon their depth is just too much for the Eagles to handle. So I'm going to say South Fremantle by about 5 goals.
All right. Rick?
Yeah, I think South are going to be bitten pretty hard after that loss against Swans. I don't think they were very impressed with the way they played. So I think they'll be itching to get back out there. And I'd say, depending on who the Eagles pick, I have looked at their side, but you can never tell because there's always emergencies that will drop back from the AFL. They've got a few players come back into the AFL side, so that might strengthen the WAFL team. But I think South, probably by similar to margin what Paul said, 4 or 5 goals, I think, in this one.
Yep, I will go with the Bulldogs as well. I think they're just a little bit too strong. Again, West Coast is still they're getting healthy, so you're going to start seeing them get a few more strength, a little bit more strength down in that waffle side. But I think South Fremantle just a little bit too good on this one. An intriguing one for you, Rick, as Swan Districts take on East Perth at Steel Blue Oval. Your thoughts, sir? Head versus heart. Can Swans pull off the win, or does East Perth just a little bit too strong?
First game of the year they played, Swans kept with them for 3 quarters. The last quarter, East Perth just pushed away. Swans since then have been probably the strongest last quarter side in the competition. East Perth have won, I think, 8 out of 9 first quarters. So I think the start of this match is going to be really big. If Swans can stick with them again for the first 3 quarters, I think at home it may be able to get over the line. The last 2 times we've played, though, East Perth have won by about 5 or 6 goals. They're big-bodied midfield has always been a problem for Swans. The ruckmans, Scotty Jones, the most dominant ruckman, I think, in the WAFL. He's a big boy. Swans, Nathan Blakely is probably almost about a foot shorter. Can't jump. So basically doesn't win the ruck hit outs. So that's where East Perth's midfield, and you've got the likes of Brayshaw, Croden, Shoemaker in there. They are missing Angus Scott on the wing, who usually burns us with 30-odd disposals every game. So he's missing. But my heart wants to say Swans, and I really hope we get over the line. And I think we can win, but I just think East Perth are probably a little bit stronger at this stage. The form line probably suggests Swans with 3 wins in a row, and East Perth just getting over the line against West Perth in the Derby and that loss against Claremont. Maybe they're going off the ball, but yeah, I think East Perth win by a kick. Again, another heart stopper for Swannies, but I hope I'm wrong and Swans win. But yeah, I think East Perth just. Sorry, Swannies, but we'll get there anyway.
All your thoughts.
Well, you've said the Swans can win, Rick. I reckon they will win. I'm going with the Swans in this one. I reckon they can sense the urgency. They're building something. And also, what's going to make the difference is that they've got a more flexible and more potent forward line. Because when you think about this, East Perth, they're without Mitch Schofield. So they are lacking a quality key forward. But when you look at the likes of Tedesco and McCready, can they shift inside that forward 50, be that permanent forward against a good Swan Districts backline? Swan Districts, meanwhile, Lee Coleman, will he return from serving his concussion protocols? If he does, that adds plenty of depth to that forward 50. You've also got Brad Lynch there, who's absolutely killing it inside that forward 50. And you've also got a couple of others that can add some valuable scoreboard pressure. So you also got McLaughlin and Edwards in there as well. I almost missed them. So I'm going with the Swans. They really need to shut down Scotty Jones as well. They've got Turner and Rokar, who's going to be matched up with Brayshaw and Crowther, respectively. What a battle that is going to be in the midfield rotation. But more flexible forward line, I reckon, is going to be what does it for the Swans. And I reckon it's also going to be by a kick, and hopefully a big crowd over there at Steel Blue Oval. It's going to be a rip snorter of a game.
I'll tell you this, Rick. You must be a glutton for punishment, considering you're tipping against your team and tipping that it's going to be a tight game and only lose by 6. I love you, Rick, but it's a little weird.
Reverse psychology. If I say that and we win, I'm happy.
I'm gonna break the tie. This is one of those. I sit here and I go, Swan Districts at home. They played East Perth really well in that first game. Like as Rick said, just kind of fell apart in the fourth quarter a little bit. I'm going to give Swan Districts. I think they're up and about. They're playing really good. They're playing really good footy. You got a lot of positive momentum. As I said, a few injuries for East Perth, I think, could be capitalized by the Swans. So I'm going to tip Swan Districts in this one. I'm hoping maybe a couple, maybe 2-3 goal win this one. Maybe they find a way to kind of really cement themselves in the 5 on this one. So I will make my co-host grin a little bit, tipping Swans in this one. We go to Revo Fitness Stadium as Claremont take on Perth. This is one of those, I hate saying it. It's Claremont, and Claremont by how much?
Yeah, I think so. I think Claremont easy in this one. Perth still haven't got Simpson and Constable back. I think definitely Constable's out for a few more weeks. Yeah, I think Claremont. If they can beat East Perth and Peel, yeah, I don't think they're going to have any problems with Perth. And at Claremont Oval or Revo Fitness, Claremont don't lose to Perth there. They're not going to lose.
Right. Paul?
No, there's no way in hell. I mean, there is a greater chance of yours truly entering a marathon than Claremont losing to Perth, honestly. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you just can't trust Perth at the moment, especially with the run of injuries and lack of form that they've had. They can't play 4 quarters of footy. That's the bottom line. Claremont, they've been able to do so, especially against the 2 top sides in their last 2 games, Peel Thunder and East Perth, respectively. They've got some good wins on the board against them. If they can't beat Perth after beating Peel Thunder and East Perth, something's definitely wrong. So Claremont by a mountain, I'll say that much.
Claremont should win this, but this is the old-fashioned, I've heard it used a lot, trap game. This could be an old-fashioned trap game. Do they take Perth lightly and just Perth surprise them a little bit? I still think Claremont win this one, but this is one of those, can Claremont focus and get through a game? You know you're supposed to win. You know you're the better team. Do you take it lightly? That'll be the biggest question there. I think Claremont win it, but this is one of those, can Claremont stay focused? That'll be the biggest question on that one. And then a fun one at Petnet Stadium as West Perth take on Peel Thunder. Paul is my West Perth man. Can they pull the shocker and knock off the Thunder, or are the Thunder just too good right now?
Call me crazy, but I've gone West Perth. They need to sense the urgency in this game against the top side in Peel Thunder. They need their players to get back into form. There is no greater test now than to take on the top side in Pure Thunder. I mean, they got absolutely walloped back in round 6, but they can put that behind them with a win against Pure Thunder this weekend. If they don't win, their season's cooked. So they've got to sense the urgency that every game in the second half is sort of like a virtual final, win or bust. Pure Thunder, their depth is right there. It is at the top of the competition. You've got the likes of Liam Reedy in the ruck. He dominated against Perth. Neil Erasmus in midfield, Will Brodie supporting him as well on the ball. And up forward, Nathan Wilson. I mean, he's no longer a Freo listed player, so you can put him up forward permanently and he can kick big bags of goals. But I reckon that back line, want to really face the challenge and take the challenge up to Nathan Wilson. So with that in mind, I've gone West Perth by a kick because they need to sense the urgency in this challenge here, because in front of their home crowd, they face a big test. It's win or their season is cooked.
All right, Rick, your thoughts?
All right. I think the Thunder's got this one. I think a 20-goal thrashing the last time they played. Peel's highest ever score, biggest winning margin. I think West Perth have got too much of a mountain to climb for this one. Although, having said that, again, Peel, they've won 5 out of 29 games at Arena Joondalup, and the last one was, their first win since 2017 last year. So they don't win there very often, Peel, but I just think they're just a bit too strong, I think, for West Perth at the moment. There's probably West Perth, not their last hurrah, but they definitely need a win, and maybe that gets them over the line. They did push East Perth that we mentioned on the Foundation Day, and as Paul said, they probably should have won that game, but they didn't. I'm not surprised if West Perth win, but I think Peel maybe by 3 or 4 goals in this one.
This will be a fascinating one. I think the first 10 minutes will tell me what it is. If West Perth can jump to a lead and get the crowd behind them, they've got a shot. If Peel can kind of keep the stadium on their hands and kind of take away the crowd, then I think it's a different game. I'm going to tip Peel, but I'm with Paul in this one. I think the coach revs them up, telling him, hey, if you want your season to continue after the home and away, this is the game we're going to need. We're going to need this one. We've stumbled a little bit. He's going to have to rev these boys up. They're going to have to come out hot as a firecracker, going to have to get at least a 2 or 3 goal lead very quickly to make Peel kind of go, whoa. And then we'll have to see. Going to tip Peel, but I think West Perth's going to be up to this to their eyeballs. This could come down to the fourth quarter, maybe even a kick like Paul said. It'll be fascinating game there. So let's jump to it. That'll be the men's tipping. We will jump over to the women's, and we're going to tip the entire finals. We're going to see how good we are. This is going to be fun. 2 games this weekend. Both of these ones, absolute belters. Cannot wait for it. So let's get started. The elimination final between West Perth Swan Districts, win or go home. Paul, who do you like?
This game's harder to pick than a broken nose. And again, it's for the Persic Gauchi Cup. I've lost 1 cup already. Shout out to Jacob Lansby, who's an East Fremantle fan. They absolutely walloped us in the men's competition, and they did the same thing in the women's. So I don't want to lose another one. But I'm going West Perth here because it's at home. Even though it's their first final, I reckon it's going to be a really good lesson in finals experience, and the home crowd will really rev them up. But I reckon if there is one factor that could win it for the Swans on the other side of the coin, it's their backline. Their backline has been magnificent in shutting down some potent forwards. If the backline led by Bella Edgley can shut down the West Perth forward line, that'll be a big difference. But I reckon the Falcons will be fired up in front of their home crowd. And the first of a doubleheader on the Sunday at Pentanet Stadium, I reckon that's going to really inspire them to a big victory. But it's only going to be a kick in it. I reckon it's going to be an absolute belter. It'll go down to the wire. But West Perth, I reckon, will get up, but just.
Cannot wait. Rick?
Well, you're going to have to be the tiebreaker of this one, don't you, Donnie?
I know. I sat as soon as I asked the question, I'm like, I literally could have went, Paul, you're going to tip West Perth most likely. Rick, you're going to tip Swans. Why should I even ask this question? I'm gonna, like I said, I'm a glutton for punishment. I want to hear this. So, Rick, your thoughts on why Swans are going to win this one?
Just because I go for Swans and they're my team, and it's a final.
He's just honest. I love it.
No surprise.
Right
no surprise at all.
What can you say? No, I just think that probably take a lot of encouragement from their win a couple of weeks ago. That was at Joondalup as well when they beat West Perth. So Swans have had experience in finals. Probably not a lot of the team. Obviously turned over quite a bit from the last couple of years when they did play finals, but historically have been a finals side, Swans. So I think maybe that experience, and West Perth maybe bit of pressure is probably on West Perth. They've got all the finals at Joondalup. If they get to the grand final, it'll be there. So the pressure's there for West Perth. So I just think Swans maybe maybe get over the line because West Perth kicked too many points. Maybe that's where I'm going to go with this one.
Yeah, this is an absolute cracking game because
Who
it
knows?
really is going to be interesting because Swan Districts is a team that can put up a lot of points really quickly. West Perth good defensively, they can put up points. It's going to be a cracking game. I'm really looking at it going, West Perth's been just a little bit more consistent this year, but Swan Districts is one of those teams when they can get on a roll, they can be absolutely dangerous. I've coin flipped this so many times. I think I'm going to go with the Falcons. I think being at home is going to be a helper for them. I think they've got a little bit more experience when it comes to it. Swan Districts comes in again that with a lot of momentum. You do come off that win for Swan Districts. Against West Perth a little bit earlier, but sometimes that can really fire up an opponent, especially at home. I'm going to tip the Falcons in this one, but this is razor thin. I think this is a 50-50
Oh,
coin
yeah.
toss one. You're just as good flipping a coin as you are trying to break this one down because both these teams on their day can be absolutely deadly going forward. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to tip West Perth, but this was really tough to pick this one because I like Swan District's offense. Their forwards are absolutely damaging in every way possible. It'll all come down to can they get service? That'll be fun on that one. We'll jump to the top of the top of the table as we see the two teams that have been dominating this competition for several years, East Fremantle, Claremont, right after this game on this one. Rick, we'll start with you. Does East Fremantle knock Claremont down and move themselves into a grand final, or can Claremont pull an upset and send the Sharks into an elimination final?
Yeah, I think East Fremantle are the favourites. I'm pretty sure they'll go through with this one by probably around 3 or 4 goals. I don't think it'll be a very high scoring game. I think the games between these sides historically are pretty tight. I think East Fremantle just probably get over the line by maybe say 3 or 4 goals, but not even that much. Probably, 1 or 2 goals actually. So it might be a 5-goal to 3-goal sort of game, a low-scoring game, which does open it for an upset for Claremont to get over the line. But I think the Sharks will just be a bit too good in this one.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I'm going to say the Sharks as well, but it won't be by that much. I reckon it's going to be a very tight encounter. I think it'll go right down to the wire. It will be tight, won't be high scoring, but it will be very intense. I mean, you've got East Fremantle, they've got a solid lineup. Gomes, Wong, Fish, Beckett, you name it. Claremont, same thing. Harkin, Nichols, Tompkin as well. Campo, O'Donnell, Eva O'Donnell, keep in mind, kicked 6 goals, so she could be a potent force up forward against East Fremantle. But I reckon the Sharks will prove too strong and move into their third successive WAFL W Grand Final and chance for back-to-back premierships.
I'm with you both on this one. I think East Fremantle just a little bit too strong. Claremont's been a little bit inconsistent, kicking on goal a little bit, which I think really hurts you in finals when possessions are that much more important. I like the Sharkies in this one. Fins up for many of the Shark fans listening to this one. So Claremont will drop down in all 3 of ours. We will go to Paul. You have West Perth v Claremont in this semifinal to see who gets to place East Fremantle in the championship. Who do you see moving on? Do the Falcons pull it off, or can Claremont get back to another grand final?
And I've said this for a number of weeks. I think Claremont have started and have gone off the boil a little bit. They haven't won as convincingly as some would think, especially the depth that Claremont have got. And West Perth, despite the 2 straight losses leading into the finals, I still think they're in a good frame of mind. So call me bonkers on this one. I'm going West Perth. I reckon it's going to be an East Fremantle West Perth grand final on July 7th at Pentanet Stadium in Joondalup. I reckon West Perth, that they've just got this belief in them. And Clint Degerbrot, the coach, has done a magnificent job leading this side of the finals. So for me, on preliminary final day on July 30, on that Sunday afternoon, I reckon West Perth will beat Claremont and advance to their first grand final.
All right, Rick, you have Swans v Claremont. Can your beloved Swans knock off Claremont and get to a grand final, or can Claremont get back to another rematch with East Fremantle on the last day of the women's season?
Yeah, I think Claremont will probably just have the wood over Swans. I don't like saying that, obviously, but yeah, I just think that they'd probably just be a bit too strong. Claremont have been up there for a number of years for a reason. They've got a pretty strong side. I think Claremont will probably just prevail by, again, a couple of goals. Again, it'll be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Swannies girls can get up and get the win. And obviously, I want that to happen, but I think Claremont might just be a bit too strong. They're just probably that next level that Swans aren't at. So As Paul said, if West Perth do beat Swans in the first semi-final, I wouldn't be surprised if they do get up over Claremont. Just sort of that matchup and just the playing at home and stuff like that. I think it could give West Perth a bit of a push if they do get over Swans in the first semi.
I'm going to do the same thing that I did in my previous state league competition, and I'm going to do it again. West Perth, I think, will knock off Claremont. I think this is one of those situations where the second place team, they come down, there's the disappointment, and you face a red hot team that's playing well, playing good footy, and they come in with a lot of confidence. They know they've beaten this Claremont team before, so I see West Perth Falcons sending Claremont home in straight sets, which is not something I thought I would ever say, but right now I'm not confident in the way Claremont is playing. So I see West Perth, East Fremantle in a grand final. So that makes all three grand finals will be West Perth versus East Fremantle and Paul's, and also West Perth and East Fremantle and myself. And we have a rematch, Claremont, East Fremantle in Rick's. So Rick, we'll jump to you. Claremont, East Fremantle, rematch from an earlier game. Did East Fremantle beat Claremont again, or does Claremont spoil East Fremantle and get another premiership?
Yeah, I think the Sharks back to back. I think losing one game of the year. We've talked about before in previous pods where the last two premierships have gone against the team who's finished on top, but they hadn't lost the game all year and then they lose on the big day. So I think this time East Fremantle have had that loss through the season. Then I can't see them losing the grand final. They're just, I think, streets above the rest of the opposition. Their percentage over 200. I think they're going to be too strong for Claremont, and even if it's West Perth making it through, I can't see them getting over the line against the Sharks.
Okie dokie, Paul. East Fremantle, West Perth for yours. Can the Falcons pull the upset, or is East Fremantle hoisting another premiership flag back to back?
Something would have to go terribly wrong for East Fremantle not to lift that premiership. I'm going East Fremantle any day of the week, regardless of the opposition. I mean, just the quality they've got at every end of the ground, the fact that they've only lost one game this season. I mean, you'd have to be absolutely bonkers to not tip East Fremantle to win the premiership this season. They have been just an unbelievable side to watch. They're a very good scoring team as well. If they can get off to a good start and get some early goals on the board and put the pressure on the opposition, I mean, you just can't go past them. I mean, East Fremantle all the way in 2024. They're going back to back. Take it to the bank.
I am 100% with you. As much as I would love to see West Perth in its finals debut pull a Central Districts like the Sandful and win their first premiership, I think East Fremantle's just the littlest bit too good in this one. So deep, so strong. Zippy Fish will show out again like she did last year and strengthen her spot in the national draft coming up here for the AFLW, which that little ripper is going to be fantastic to watch coming into the AFLW. I cannot wait. East Fremantle fins up another premiership back to back on that one. So cannot fight that. It is so fun to sit here and talk women's footy. It's so fun to talk waffle footy. Gentlemen, that is it. I cannot wait. This weekend's going to be fun. I'm going to try to watch these games live. If not, worst case scenario, I will watch these games in their entirety because they're just too good to miss at that time. Cannot wait for this. So, as per usual, gentlemen, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. It's always great to talk waffle footy. Paul, best of luck again. Do you have any calls this weekend? And what game are you do you have the luxury of calling this week?
Well, believe it or not, I've got 4 games. So I've got the Colts game between West Perth and Peel Thunder at Pentanet Stadium in Joondalup. And then later in the day, it's off to Rivo Fitness Stadium, another visit there to call the Claremont-Perth clash, the second meeting between the two teams. And also, believe it or not, I'm doing both the WAFL W semi-finals, so in a double header. And I just hope that my voice doesn't go after the second game on Sunday for one. So it'll be an absolute miracle if my voice is intact. But no, those 4 games, can't wait to do the games on Saturday. And then, of course, on Sunday, both the WAFL W semi-finals and a great double header at Pentanet Stadium. So it's a big weekend. Can't wait.
Yeah, I cannot wait. And for you on the call, even more reason for me to try to make sure that I listen to these live. Cannot wait. And Rick, we always catch up whenever we do. How are things on WA Footy Facts? I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to say the end of it because I always forget. How are things on the website? Anything new hopping on the website recently?
WAFLFootyFacts.net, Donny. We'll get that
.net.
right eventually.
I'm gonna write
No,
it
it's all good,
down. I
mate.
gotta write it down.
No, nothing to update on this week. I've been a bit crook the last few weeks and a bit busy with work and my real job, so I haven't really done a hell of a lot more of work on there. over the last couple of weeks, other than just updating the weekly scores and everything. So that's always what I'm doing, keeping up to date with the recent results and updating all the match and player data from each week. And that continues, as well as adding my normal weekly previews and stuff like that, which are all available through my website and my links. So yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. I love making sure that people go to, like I said, the first few times that I looked at it, I literally sat there for like an hour just going, oh my gosh, there's so much cool stuff to look through. I'm not going to be able to get through this entire website very soon. So absolutely a fantastic thing. If you were a Waffle fan, to go check out Waffle Footy Facts. That is fantastic.net. I will make sure and remember it this time for sure. So gentlemen, that is going to do it for the podcast. Again, I always enjoy talking Waffle Footy and Waffle W Footy. It is, I cannot wait for it. We will reconvene after the grand final, break down the finals and everything that has happened in the men's the next time we hop on. So that'll do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. We will be back again very, very soon with more footy coverage in your ear. We will see you very soon on your ears.